Om Shuklam Varadaram Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vighnopashantaye Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so we have, as you know, Ganesh Utsavam coming up at the temple. So as a part of that, we are going to have two talks today and next Wednesday. And the topic for the talks is Ganapati Stavam. So it's a prayer to Sri Ganesha. So let us see what is the message that is there in this particular prayer, But before we get to that, I'd like to present a scenario to you, Suppose you're in a situation where you want to introduce somebody to an unknown audience, who don't know him or her. How would you do that? How do we do that? So introduce a person, you start with a name, perhaps, So this is Mr. So-and-so, Subramaniam. That's enough. Really, that's enough. But then that's not enough. Okay. It is enough to tell me who is that person is, essentially. We identify him by something, by a name, and this is what he is. But then in order to be able to relate to this person, I want to know something more about him. So then I will say, well, that's not enough. He is Subramaniam, but then he is a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher. And then, so I know a little bit more about him. Perhaps talk about his family. He's married. He has so many children. He's a director of his company. He's a great person, very philanthropic, and so on. So I describe different characteristics of the person. And the characteristics of the person then give me an opportunity to know something more about him, who he is, what are his expressions, and how I can relate to this person. So this is how generally somebody is introduced. When we look at our Shastram, our scriptures, what is the message of the scripture ultimately? What Shastram is trying to do is to introduce us. First of all, to introduce us to Bhagavan, to introduce us to Parameshwara, and in the process, introduce us to ourselves too. Tell us something about ourselves and the world that we live in. And in order to introduce Bhagavan, what does Shastram do? It employs a similar means. It tells me what Bhagavan is, Essentially, this person is, there is some name. That's what we call the substantive, the name, the noun, the first person. And then all the characteristics are added to the person, which are incidental, it adds to what he is. And so those characteristics are all adjectives, really speaking. They're not nouns. So there is a substantive, there are adjectives, characteristics, his qualities, gunas, So Bhagavan also, in being introduced, is introduced to us by Shastram in a twofold way. One is in terms of essentially what Paramatma is, what Bhagavan is. That is what we call, in other words, Nirgunam, also called as Nirgunam. So it introduces us to Nirgunam Brahma, what is called as Nirgunam Brahma. And then also the same thing from the standpoint of other characteristics which are incidental, not essential, incidental, which are the expressions and manifestations. That is which help us to relate to Parameshwara. Those are what are called as the gunas, the qualities, the expressions, or Sagunam. That is Sagunam Brahma. Nirgunam Brahma is something to know, to recognize. Sagunam is something to relate to. These are not two different things. It is the same because Parameshwara is only one. So thus, in many different ways, Shastram tries to reveal this to us so that we can recognize it, we can understand the Lord, and also be able to relate to our source, to Parameshwara. And in this relating, in Sagunam, in our Dharma, in Sanatana Dharma, there are primarily 6 different traditions of how Parameshwara we relate to. They're called Agamas. So thus we have Shaiva Agama, Vaishnava Agama, Shaktas, then Ganapatya, Kaumara, and Saurya, where Bhagavan is looked upon as Sriman Narayana or looked upon as Maheshwara or Bhuvaneshwari Shakti, Parashakti, or looked upon as Sri Ganapati, Sri Subramanyam Kumara, Kartikeya, or Surya Narayana. So thus, these are what are called as Agamas. These are from the standpoint of Sagunam. They're all the same. They all refer to the same entity. Now, we look at this, so Vedas, etc., all talk about this. Even in prayers, we see this message. One example of which we will see, and that is Ganapati Stavam. So here, in this particular way, tradition, Ishvara, Sagunam Brahma, is looked upon as Sri Ganapati, Sri Ganesha, as Parameshwara is invoked and understood. It is a prayer of praise to Sri Ganesha and attributed to Garga Rishi. And in this prayer, he uses many terms that are derived from a stuti that is there in the Puranas, wherein Sri Brahmaji so worships or praises Sri Ganesha. See, actually praises Ishvara in the form of Varada Vinayaka, Varada, the one who gives all varam, boons. And so he takes a lot of the words from that stuti, and then this particular one is attributed to him. So we will look at that. Look at this, really beautiful of a few verses. So let's start with the first one. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam niralambam anandapurnam param nirgunam nirvishesham niriham param brahma rupam ganesham bhajema. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaram ekam niralambam advaitam anandapurnam param nirgunam nirvishesham niriham param brahma rupam ganesham bhajema. No? Ganesham bhajema. I worship, I take recourse to, I take refuge in Sri Ganesha, Lord Ganapati. He says, and who is he? He is Param Brahma. Param Brahma. Param Brahma is, so Nirgunam, talks about Nirgunam Brahma here. Begins with that. That's how introduce somebody. That is essentially who he is. You know, that is his Svarupam. You know. Nirgunam Svarupam. Says. And which is, what is that Svarupam? Param. He's called Brahma. Brahma is his name. And this nature of Brahma is Param. That which, what is his characteristics? Not yet. He transcends everything. You know? That which transcends Desha Kala, time and space. The one who transcends time and space is free from all limitations. What are the things that limit us, really speaking? We are limited. How are we limited? We are limited in time. We are limited by space. We occupy limited space. And we are also limited by being who we are and what we are. Different from everything else. We are a particular object, different from other objects. So Desha, Kala, Vastu, these three things are the ones that limit us, obviously. Bhagavan, Parabrahma is something that transcends, is not limited by any of this. Transcends time, transcends space. It's not an object, an individual object, because he's infinite. So therefore, he is called as transcendental. Brahma Svarupam Bhajema, I bow to him. And who? Ganesham. He is Ganeshaha. He is the Lord of Gananam Ishaha. Ganas are all the attendants of Lord Shiva, like Nandi, Bhindi, Yakshas, Gandharvas, all the many celestial forms of celestial beings are considered to be the attendants of Lord Shiva. They're called Shiva Ganas. And he is the one who's the master of all of them, in charge of all of them. So he's called as Ganapati or Ganesham, you know. Not only that, he is Ajam. As this Nirgunam, Ajam. Ajam is that which is not subject to Janma, that which is not subject to birth. Param said is free from time and space. Anything that is subject to birth is subject to time. Birth, the whole concept of birth. Birth is a concept, you know. That's why we're having it so much difficulty establishing when birth takes place. Because it's not a absolute thing. It is a relative. I have to first establish some relative point in time. For example, the birth. Is it the conception? Is it the DNA? Is it the breathing? It is the separation. Is it the cutting the umbilical cord? What something I have to establish, and only from that reference standpoint, I can establish a time of birth. So it is relative, and at the same time, it is within time. Bhagavan is not within time. Brahman is not within time. He is not subject to time because he transcends time. So because he transcends time, he is Ajam. Okay, he's Ajam, called as Ajam. Okay. Not only that, he says, Nirvikalpam, free from vikalpas. Vikalpas are thoughts, So it is not something that is available for a thought or available in the form of a thought. What is available in the form of a thought? Well, the perceptions, for example, anything that I perceive outside. So there is a thought of it in my mind. That is what I perceive, in fact. So every perception is a thought, is a vikalpam. The perception may be external, in keeping with something external, an object, something I see, or it may be internal. It may be my own thoughts. Close my eyes and I perceive my thoughts. So all of these are called as vikalpas. So all objects, internal or external, Bhagavan is free from all vikalpas. It was already said before, he is not free from time, space, and objectivity, being an object. Desha kala vastu aparichinnam. So this vastu aparichinnam also is freedom from vikalpas, not in the form of a thought, cannot be objectified. And also space. Objects are also conditioned by space. So that takes care of all this space, time, and object. Ajam and nirvikalpam. Ajam, nirvikalpam. Nirakaram. Nirakaram. Akara is again a form. Particular form is called as akara. Again, it can be external or internal. That also creates a limitation in terms of objectivity, limitation in terms of space. It is free from all of that. So it is free. It's called Nirakaram. Nirakar. In Granth Sahib also they say is free from akaras. Not only that, Ekam. Bhagavan is Ekam. Is there. We are not getting into nothing here. There is Bhagavan. And he is one. And this is a different kind of a one. It is not the one that many people think of as one. It's not an individual one. It's not like a numerical one, followed by a 2 and a 3 and a many, Whereas this is a one that is a infinite one, is one of a kind, of which there is no other, In fact, that is the only thing, and not only thing individual, distinct, separate, but the only one thing which is including everything. It is the one where there is no second thing available, where all the second, third, etc. gets incorporated into the one. Like in mathematics, you have infinity. Infinite is one alone. Numerals are many, countless, in fact. Now, infinite is not another numeral. Infinite is something very unique. It includes all the numerals. At the same time, it is not part of the numerals. You take away all the numerals, it still remains. Infinite alone is there. Numerals are something that are really speaking incidental, So here he says Bhagavan, Parameshwara, Brahman, Nirgunam is Ekam, where there is no second thing separate from it. Thus also called as Advitiyam. So it is when we say Ekam, it is Ekam Advitiyam Sat. Ekam Sat Bahuda Vipraha Vadanti. People talk of it from different ways, from different standpoints, but it is one alone. Niralambanam Ekam Niralambanam, Nirvishesham, Niriham. Niralambanam means, alambanam is a support, an adhishtanam, a locus on which something is dependent. Everything that we see is always dependent on something else. You know, its existence is dependent on something else. Its perception is dependent on something. I look at the world. I'm aware of the objects. The objects are there, they are evident to me. But then, in these objects, what makes the objects evident? What makes them present to me? In the nighttime, I don't see anything. In the daytime, I see everything. So, it is there, it is not there. What does it depend on? It depends on light. If there is no light, the objects are there, I still don't see them. If there is light, the objects are there, I see them. They are present, they are available, they are evident. So, I can say that the objects are dependent on light. One is independent, the other is dependent. But is the light dependent on the objects? Not really. Light is there itself, available. Even if the objects are there or not, light is there. If the objects are, so this is what is meant by dependent and independent. Is adhishtanam is something that supports other things. Brahman like that, like light with reference to the objects is independent in terms of perception. Here Brahman also is something that is independent in terms of everything else. So everything is dependent on that something. And that something is what is called as Brahman, okay, Nirgunam, the locus, without which nothing will be there. So, Tameva Bhantam Anubhati Sarvam. So, Bhagavan, Parameshwara in the form of Brahman, or the one that sustains everything, is called as Niralambanam. Itself has no support. Param we have seen. So, Nirvishesham. Visheshas are so particular characteristics that separate one from the other. You know, these are not the essential Svarupa of Brahman, of Nirgunam. They are there incidentally, you know, like Subramanyam. All his other characteristics and qualities were incidental. They were there, but that was not what made him. You know, he is he, the individual. Then all these accessories, adjectives are always accessories. You know? Yeah, we relate to accessories. We know the substantive. It should be the other way around. Even in the world, the accessories seem to be more important. People go for the accessories, not for what is the real thing that the accessories are supposed to enhance. You know, like clothes and makeup and all that kind of stuff. So, nirvishesham, niriham, free from desires, you know, because he is Purnam. He said he is Ananda Rupam. Since he is Ananda Rupam, Ananda Purnam, he is full, complete. Therefore, he doesn't have any desires that are prompted by a feeling of inadequacy, a feeling of lack, or feeling of needing to acquire things, you know. Parabrahma Rupam Ganesham Bhajema. That particular Svarupam of Sri Ganesha, I worship, I take refuge in him. Number 2. Gunatitamadyam Chidananda Rupam Chidabhasakam Sarvagam Jnanagamyam Munidhyeyam Akasha Rupam Paresham Param Brahma Rupam Ganesham Bhajema. Gunatitam. Now this verse introduces us to Sri Ganesha as Sagunam. I need to relate to all of this. He is Nirgunam, he is Nirvishesham, he transcends everything, he is Ekam, infinite, including. How do I relate to him? You know, how do I relate to him? Well, to relate to him, I need to understand his characteristics, his gunas. Gunas. He already said he is Nirgunam. But then he reiterates that first by saying Gunatitam. Bhagavan is essentially Gunatitam. Essentially transcends all the gunas, all the characteristics and qualities. What do gunas do? The world is made up of gunas. The world is made up of objects. It's not just uniform. It's not one homogeneous thing that we are born in. It's made up of varieties of things. And what is it that makes up for all these varieties? Why is it not just one homogeneous? We are born, we are gone. Well, what distinguishes things from one another are what are called as gunas or qualities. The purpose of qualities are to make each one distinct from the other and to distinguish one from the other. And that is the only way we can relate to each other. Otherwise, there would be no relating. And the jiva is born in order to relate, to fulfill some karmas. So thus, qualities are the essential nature of this jagat, this changing world. It is also what brings about the change. It is something that occurs in time and space. All this happens in the universe. There is this activity, all because of gunas. Okay. But this is not the essential thing. This is incidental. Like all our vyavahara with each other is because of gunas, really speaking. Our qualities, our characteristics, our nature, our differences, our distinctions. This is at that level we relate to each other. We don't just relate. If everyone is a jiva, as a jiva, there is nothing to relate. There is no distinction. There is no separation. So one is essential, one is incidental. So he says essentially, Bhagavan, he is gunatitam. He is gunatitam. But at the same time, from the standpoint of this srishti, of this world, of this universe, in which everything, when it manifests, when the infinite manifests, like the ocean becoming the waves, when the ocean, one ocean takes on many different characteristics, okay, it doesn't become different from what it is. But at the same time, it is manifest in many different ways, many different forms. Like that, he says, he's gunatitam, but again, in terms of time and space, he manifests within time and space as time and space. Time and space is also a part of manifestations. So this is what we call as Sagunam, And as Sagunam, he is what? Adyam. Gunatitam Adyam. Adyam is the first, the Karanam, Adi Karanam, the one from which everything is manifest. So all that is manifest from this infinite, one infinite Lord, in as though in many different forms because of the gunas, is what is called as trigunas, the three essential gunas. There are gunas are multitude, but can be reduced into three, as we know. So that's what is called as Maya Shakti. So he says, this is essentially Nirgunam, but at the same time has this potential of gunas which are there, which can actualize, which can manifest. And this is what is called as the Maya Shakti, the potential which is actualized in the jivas, in the living beings, who experience this whole universe as separate and distinct. And where does it all come from? Where did all the waves come from? Came from the original source, the ocean. And the original source is Bhagavan, is Sri Mahaganapati as Parameshwara, as Ishvara. So he says he is Adyam. Not only that, Chidananda Rupam. Gunatitam Adyam Chidananda Rupam. This is not something which is some kind of energy, you know. People say everything now, energy is the fashion, you know. There are trends you find even in this, in the spiritual pursuit and language seeking. Now there is this trend for everything the people want to look at it as energy, you know, and there's something they think they can relate to. So it is not energy inert. It is not something inert. This is not about physics, you know. This is something which is conscious. Is Chit Svarupam, to show that this Ekam Advitiyam is not an inert thing, but it is something which has consciousness. It says it is Chit. Chit means consciousness. And not only that, he says it is something which is not free, being free from all limitations. It is Ananda Rupam. Anandam again is another word. We generally look upon Ananda as happiness or joy, which is a state of the mind, you know. But that state of the mind is an expression of something which is deeper. And that something which is deeper is a fullness, you know. Something in which there is no lack, there is no inadequacy. There is a sense of completeness. There is completeness which expresses in a limited mind in the form of happiness or joy. It is what is called as Anantam. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma is the definition of Brahma. That Anantam is something that expresses in an individual mind that recognizes itself in the form of Anandam. So therefore, it is called as Satchit and Ananda from the standpoint of the individual. So Bhagavan is the very source of Anandam, himself Chit Svarupam, in the form of consciousness. Chidabhasakam. Chidabhasakam. That means, so in an individual, it's the same Chit Svarupam awareness, that is the essential nature of Brahman, is also the nature of the individual, the essential nature of an individual. Because everything is nothing but an expression of Bhagavan anyway. So it's not going to be different essentially, you know. The differences are only incidental. Chidabhasakam sarvagam. Sarvagam. He goes, the one that is all over the place. Bhagavan is called as all pervasive. Remember, he was Ekam, like infinite. What is the relationship? Now, keep in mind, he's talking all about gunas, Sagunam here, in terms of relating. What's the relationship between infinite and the numbers? What's the relationship? Well, the infinite includes all the numbers. Wherever any number is there, there is infinite is there. Okay. The infinite pervades all the numbers. Like the dreamer pervades the whole dream. Bhagavan pervades the whole manifestation, the whole universe, the whole Jagat, Srishti. So that is what is meant by he's all pervasive, you know. As consciousness, where does consciousness pervade? Where is consciousness? Where is consciousness? Awareness, where is it? You know, Is it in my brain? Is it in my stomach? Is it in my toe? Where is it? Well, I have to say it's everywhere. It is really everywhere. Because if you touch my toe, then I know you're touching my toe. It is conscious. There is consciousness there. There is consciousness in my hands. There is consciousness within me. I'm conscious of my mind. I'm conscious in my thoughts. It's in my organs. In fact, I'm conscious of even things outside. There is nothing which is there which is outside of my consciousness. Everything is in my consciousness. Everything is sustained by consciousness. Even things that I don't know are in my consciousness. Therefore, whenever you ask me a question, I say, I don't know. I don't know. There are different reasons why we say, I don't know. But one of the reasons is, I don't know. So even what I don't know is in my consciousness. So where is this consciousness? Well, whatever and wherever anything is, consciousness is there. It is sarvagam. It is all pervasive. That is Ishvara's manifestation, he says. Ishavasyam idam sarvam. Anything, there is nothing outside that falls outside Parameshwara. Jnanagamyam. Bhagavan is all over. Is a standard question. So I should be able to see him all over. No, I'm not able to see him. I'm not able to see him anywhere actually, even though he's all over. And why is that? Well, because he's all over, really speaking. In order for me to see something, in order for me to perceive something, it has to be somewhere. It has to be somewhere. It has to have a location, either in time or in space. It has to be there. Well, it transcends time and space, or it is everywhere, wherever there is time and space. Nothing is outside of it. It is, in fact, because it is the subject. So therefore, it is not available for perception. Then how am I going to recognize it? He says, Jnanagamyam. It is available. Bhagavan is available for recognition because he is my Svarupam, my essential nature. He can be attained by recognizing, by knowing, by understanding one's relationship with Parameshwara, his manifestations and his essential nature. That is why Shastram does all of this to explain that to us, because it's available to be recognized. Muni Dhyayam. How do we do this? How do we come to recognize it? How does an individual come to recognize? He says, Munihi. Munihi is a mananashilaha, the one who contemplates. Our tradition is not a tradition of indoctrination. No, it's not. Because it's not about doctrines. When everything is centered on doctrines, then I have to be indoctrinated. It is not centered on doctrines. It is centered on inquiry. Because that is the nature of the human mind. It seeks to know. It seeks to inquire. It seeks to understand. And so the one who seek are called as Muni, Mananashila. They think, they contemplate, and Mananam also is meditation. So by a process of learning, Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, understanding the message of the scriptures, they come to gain this knowledge, Jnanagamyam, recognize Parameshwara, either in his essential form or in the manifestations, to be able to relate to the Lord and discover that one's connection with him. Muni Dhyayam Akasha Rupam. Akasha Rupam is in the form of Akasha. So Akasha is space. Okay. You just mentioned that Bhagavan is all pervasive. Like infinite, I said, he uses another example, one of space. Space accommodates everything. Avakasha Pradatra Akasha. Akasha is something that accommodates all objects without itself getting affected, without getting displaced. The ocean also accommodates everything. In fact, the ocean can accommodate the whole landmass. It is so big, so infinite. But then water itself, as it accommodates, it also displaces. Space is not like that. Space accommodates without itself getting it doesn't have to move. Doesn't have to move. That is all pervasiveness. So like an akasha it is, and manifest also. It is the first thing. It is part of this manifest universe is akasha, and it is the most subtle. So that is also directly, he is akasha rupam in a manifest form. Tasmad etasmad atmanaha akasha sambhutaha. Vedas, Upanishads say this. Paresham, he is Param and he is Ishvara. He transcends everything and he is the Lord of everything. Parabrahma Rupam Ganesham Bhajema. Is Parabrahma Rup. Brahman, the word Brahman itself means that which is infinite. That which is, there is nothing bigger than that, is what is called as Brahman. Comes from the Sanskrit root Brh, which means big. So it is the big in a absolute sense. Jagat Karanam Karanajnanahinam Suradim Sukhadim Yugadim Ganesham Jagadvyapinam Vishwavandyam Suresham Param Brahma Rupam Ganesham Bhajema. Okay. He is Jagat Karanam. Karanam is a cause. What is the cause? Why are we here? We ask all these questions. Why are we here? Why is the world there, etc.? This why? And when you ask why, the answer is always begins with a because. No, because. So because of this, because of that, we look upon everything in terms of cause and effect. Cause and effect. So because, why do we do that? Because again, because everything is time and space. Since everything is happening in time and space, including me, that's the nature of the manifest world. So therefore, I immediately form connection in time and space. So something came before in time, and then I see something coming out of something. So then naturally I ask, where did all this come from? Because when you look at causes, there are all kinds of causes are there. We first need to understand what is the meaning of a cause. There is a direct cause. There is indirect cause. I am here. I was born. I find myself here in this world. Because of what? Well, because of my parents. That's the immediate one answer. So there were direct cause. I am a progeny. I'm directly connected to my mother, to my father. There is one kind of cause. There is a cause of things I do something, I perform actions. I am the cause. I did something good. I did something bad. I got into a fight. Who caused it? No, I caused it. Or somebody caused it. It's a direct cause. But then sometimes this fellow doesn't cause it. He doesn't fight. He stands there and then he provokes another person to fight. He provokes another person to fight. So he is a cause also. Is he a cause? Is he not a cause? Of course, he is a cause. He's not the direct cause. He's the indirect cause. He's an accessory. He's the instigator, whatever. So that is an indirect cause. There are causes which themselves transform themselves, like the milk becomes curd, you know. So one is a cause, one is an effect. So sometimes the cause transforms itself into the effect. Between the parents and the child, the parent doesn't transform himself to the child. I'm not talking of behavior physically. So sometimes there is a transformation, sometimes there is no transformation. There's all kinds of causes and effects and cause-effect relationships. So what is, when we say Bhagavan is the cause, what kind of a cause is he? Is he a cause that is manifest as the effect? Is he a cause that is separate from the effect? Is he a cause that is really the effect, or seemingly the, this is where all some different ideas come into the picture. Is it real? Is the effect as real as the cause? So this is where you have some of the different sampradayas of Dvaitam and Advaitam and Vishishta Advaitam and all. But really speaking, essentially, Nirgunam, there is that cause is called as the Adhishthanam, that which sustains everything. It's called Adhisthana Karanam. You know, that is the one that is the basis, that is independent, that is free, itself without any qualities, you know. Whereas that which is manifest is in Advaita tradition, it is the transformation that is seeming, not real. You know, Bhagavan doesn't himself really become the world. He is non-separate from the world. At the same time, he is separate from the world. You know, he transcends the world and he is immanent in the world. Like even the dreamer. The dream world which is created is not separate from the dreamer. The dreamer pervades the whole dream world. You know, he is sarvagam. It's all pervasive in the manifest world of the dream, made up of inert and live things. You know, but at the same time, the dreamer is not the dream. The dreamer is the dream, but the dreamer transcends the dream. It's something like that. You know, so Bhagavan, from the standpoint of the world, is the Karanam, as Jagat Karanam, called as Jagat Karanam. Srishti, Sthiti, Layam, all of this looked upon in a threefold way as the Triputi is called Jagat Karanam. Sagunam Brahma. Nirgunam Brahma is as the called as the Adhisthana Karanam. That is the Svarupam. Okay. Don't forget our Subramaniam in the beginning, which his own nature, who he is, and then all these other incidental characteristics for all the relations and relativity and activity to go on. Karanam Jnana Rupam. Karanam, like I said, one is Adhisthana Karanam, one is the Jagat Karanam. And he is Jnana Rupam. Sometimes there is a Patha Beda, you know, there is another version. There are two versions. If few words you will find in this Stavam, depending on which version you're reading. In one version, it says, Jagat Karanam Karan Ajnanahinam. Another version says, Jagat Karanam Karanam Jnana Rupam. Okay, that's all. Doesn't make much difference. In one he says he is Karanam, Adhisthana Karanam, and in the form of consciousness. Okay, in the form of Chit Swarupam, like he said before. Or Ajnana Hinam, that in which there is no Ajnanam. Okay, so that in which in the form of consciousness, in the form of awareness, where there is no ignorance. Okay. This is what sometimes, what happens sometimes is ancient texts and all you come across. And in those days, there was no Xeroxing and copying and all. They people hand wrote these things. So sometimes you will find another version, or some words may be different. And then when that happens, so we just call it a Pathabheda. It's a different version, but the essential meaning does not change. Suradim, Sukhadim, Suradim, Suranam Adi. Suras are devas. So we are not just talking of this world here, but all other beings that are there, including the devas, etc. He is the cause of everything. Okay. Here is not cause only with reference to the world that we experience. It is cause with respect to the whole universe, including the devas and all beings. So he is Suradim, Sukhadim. So he is the source of all Sukham, all Anandam. He is that which exists. So in an unmanifest form, Yugadim. He was Adihi. He was the beginning, but then he was also that which exists before the beginning. What is before the beginning? The unmanifest. Okay. So before everything becomes manifest, everything is not nothing. There is no nothing. So to indicate that there is no nothing, he says that even Yugadim, even before the Yugam, or before is all cyclical for us. So it is manifest, unmanifest, manifest, unmanifest. That is the Sagunam, Rupam of Parameshwara. Jagadvyapinam Vishwavandyam Suresham. Again, Jagadvyapinam, we saw that. Like the dreamer pervades the whole dream world. Bhagavan, Ishvara pervades the whole Jagat. Ishavasyam idam sarvam Jagat. Nothing is outside the scope of Parameshwara. Outside Parameshwara, in fact. And Vishwavandyam, the one who is also worshipped by all, worshipped by everybody, all the beings. Suresham, the one, he's the Lord of the Suras, of the Devas. Even Devas pray. Even Devas pray to Ishvara. Parameshwara, Devas pray to Sri Ganesha. As Parameshwara says, Parabrahma Rupam Ganesham Bhajema. Rajo yogato Brahma Rupam Shrutignyam Sada Karya Saktam Hrida Chintya Rupam Jagat Karanam Sarva Vidya Nidhanam Sada Brahma Rupam Ganesham Natasmaha. Rajo Yogata Brahma Rupam Shrutignyam. Rajo, this is something very interesting here. So, Rajo Yogaha, he says. Rajo Yogataha. So, the one who is obtained by Rajo Yoga, not Raja Yoga. There is one Raja Yoga is there. But here, he talks of something specific. So, in Shiva Puranam, it is mentioned. So, Maheshwara talks of upasanas, and that upasanas are addressed for people, those who are, so in terms of their mind, the Rajas predominant mind, Sattva predominant mind, Rajas predominant mind, Tamas predominant mind, like that, it is there. Generally, it's interesting when people think of meditation, the whole focus or thinking is in terms of the techniques of meditation, how to do it, what to do it. All these things is where the people are caught up in that, not so much the one who's meditating. Okay. So the whole attention is towards how to meditate. But really speaking, there is somebody who's meditating, And that meditating is that mind. What is the kind of a mind that meditates? So that is a very important thing in terms of the qualification, adhikari. A person who's very agitated and then says a certain kind of a mind, very distractible, agitated, no values, lives in a certain kind of a way. Such a mind sitting down and doing meditation is different from a mind who's relatively calm and lives based on values and prayerful and things like that. So the mind is a very important aspect of meditation. It's not just about some technique or some exercise. So Lord Shiva there in the Purana talks about three types of upasana murtis. So upasana is the object of meditation. It describes for three types of mind, which is rajas predominant, tamas predominant, sattva predominant minds. And so here you will see these three verses talk of Rajo Yoga, Tamo Yoga, and Sattva Yoga, in which he describes three different upasana murtis in the form of Sri Ganesha to meditate upon. Okay. So anyway, so there's something important to keep in mind. The idea, because so upasana, everybody does pray. Even devas do prayers to Parameshwara. Manushyas do prayers to Parameshwara. So here Rajo Yoga, when he talks about, it is the kind of upasana that is applicable to the Manushyas or to the humans. Our Puranas tell us stories about Devas praying to Bhagavan, Manushyas praying to Bhagavan, even Pashus praying to Bhagavan, even animals praying to Bhagavan. All these things are there. There's some, I think, is to just basically point out the importance of the mind in meditation as much as what exactly you do and how you understand the process of meditation. So anyway, so the one who can be reached by anybody, by any jiva, whether it is a deva, it is a manushya, it is a pashu, it is any living being, can reach Bhagavan, can reach Parameshwara, really speaking, is not unavailable to anybody. It is said that Sri Ganesha is the one who's the easiest devata to please, as devata, the easiest person to please, because you don't have to do complex rituals and things like that. It's a simple. Ganesha is easily pleased. You just think of him and he will bless fully. This is what is said in the Puranas. Brahma Rupam Shrutignyam, the one who is Shrutignaha, the one who can be known by the Shruti. Shruti is the pramanam, the means of knowledge, of knowing Bhagavan. We are seeing that the language it uses, it directly tells us what Bhagavan is. So it is Shrutignyam, that which is available through the Shrutis. Sada Karya Saktam, Hrida Achintya Rupam. He is Achintya Rupam, something that cannot be thought about, because we have seen Sagunam is not an object. It's not an object, but it is something that sustains all the objects. So it's not something that one can just think of, visualize. It is the very content of all thoughts, the one that sustains all the thoughts. Sada Karya Saktam, the one who makes all things possible, everything to do. He's called as Vignam, he makes all karyams possible. He also creates difficulties. Okay. Bhagavan Ganesha is Vignakarta. He is Vignaharta. He's the one Vignam. How? Why does he do that? Well, the Karta obstacles are because of karma. As Karma Paladata, as the one who is the one behind, the one who creates the laws of karma, is the one who manifests in the form of the laws of karma. So the actions are done by us, but the phalam is because of the laws. which is non-separate from the Lord. So in that sense, he's a Vignakarta. But then at the same time, when we pray to him, then that prayer itself is again another action, which also gives results in the form of punyam, in the form of what we call grace. And then therein he becomes Vigna Harta. So he is Karya Saktam, Achintya Rupam, Jagat Karanam. We saw that. How is the cause of everything. Sarva Vidya Nidhanam, the one who Siddhi Buddhi. Siddhi Buddhi is all, are his consorts. So he is the repository. Nidhanam is a repository. He is a repository of all knowledge. Parameshwara, Ishvara is omniscience. All knowledge, remember, knowledge is connected to fact. That is knowledge. When we say knowledge, we are talking of fact, that which is. The fact is Satyam. It is there. And that which is there is Parameshwara. It's all a manifestation of the Lord. So that also in the form of omniscience, which is consistent with what is, with the fact. So all omniscience also rests in Parameshwara. And he is the one who is the cause of all of it. So therefore he is called as, he is the Sarva Vidya Nidanam. Sada Brahma Rupam. Natasmaha is same as Bhajema. I worship him. I offer salutations to him. I take refuge in him, one who is in the form of this Brahma Rupam, Brahma Svarupam, and Brahma Rupam. Swarupam, that is essential, and Rupam, that is manifest for me to be able to relate to Bhagavan. So we will continue with this next week and see the other verse. They are very beautiful verses, talk of so many different things. Now, initially having introduced him as Nirgunam primarily in the first verse, he'll go on to explain all these other verses, mostly about the expressions and manifestations of Ishvara, so that one is able to relate to the Lord. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.